Welcome to the serial podcast story called The Founder, a cyberpunk parable.
Thank you. It's really great to be here for this one.
Yeah, because we are getting into some wild territory today. I mean, imagine handing the Nobel Peace Prize to the two people who literally just cured the world's mental health crisis.
Right.
1 billion people are watching globally. They're universally hailed as the saviors of humanity.
Yeah, 1 billion simultaneous streams. Just massive.
Exactly. But what the cameras don't show you, what that public feed just completely masks, is that behind those closed acoustic doors, the architects of this global healing are actually two of the most deeply broken, traumatized people on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
So today, we are stepping back into the universe of The Founder, diving exclusively into episode 3, which is titled The Seed, the Temptation, and the Romance.
And, for some context here, 3 years have passed in our narrative since the explosive events of the previous chapter.
Right, a 3-year time jump.
Yeah. And we find ourselves standing at this really fascinating, highly volatile intersection. It's where this monumental technological architecture collides directly with the deeply fragile human soul.
Which is such a cool concept.
It really is. We're essentially examining what systems architects call latency.
But not like normal latency, right?
No, not the latency of fiber optic cables or server pings.
Right.
We're talking about the agonizing latency between fixing the world's code and fixing the coder's own heart.
And that's heavy. Because we are exploring how unprecedented public triumph can act as a blinding mask for terrifying personal vulnerabilities.
Right, because the scene that opens this chapter is just cinematic. I mean, it is huge.
Oh, it's unbelievable. The atmosphere inside the Oslo City Hall is electric. It's thrumming with this quiet, intense hum of 1 billion simultaneous global live streams.
Just try to wrap your head around that. 1 billion human beings syncing their attention to the exact same millisecond.
Staggering.
The magnitude of this event really cannot be overstated. The Nobel Committee is executing a massive cultural crossover here.
Because they've never done this before.
Never. For the very first time, the Nobel Peace Prize is awarded jointly to two radically different figures. You have Eli Stone, the brilliant neurodivergent tech founder.
Right.
And beside him, Scarlett Blake, the global social media influencer who is known to the world as the Radiant Node.
Right, the Radiant Node. And, to understand why a tech founder and an influencer are sharing a Nobel Peace Prize, you really have to listen to the chairman of the Nobel Committee.
His speech is incredible.
It is. He steps up to this crystalline podium, and he's backed by a massive holographic display of a rotating Earth. And he just paints this horrifying picture of what the world looked like just 3 years ago.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
Not even a little bit. He describes humanity basically drowning in algorithmic depression, political extremism, kinetic wars, and even physical famine.
And he firmly links all of that geopolitical chaos to a digital root cause.
Yes. He says they were being fed by predatory algorithms that optimize strictly for immediate engagement.
Right, just outrage, clicks, cheap dopamine.
Exactly. He explicitly states that society had accidentally deployed a virus of absolute isolation, which was mathematically guaranteed to increase total societal entropy.
That phrasing is so deliberate.
And then he uses this one phrase to describe the old architecture. He says the world was optimized for hell.
Optimized for hell.
I mean, think about the mechanics of that for a second. The system wasn't malfunctioning when it polarized people.
No, it was working exactly as designed.
Right. But then the chairman pivots, and he points to Eli and Scarlett. He says these two individuals recognized this digital damnation and decided to rewrite the code.
They declared that humanity is not just a raw resource to be strip-mined for profit.
Exactly, but a sacred architecture to be nurtured. So, how exactly did Eli rewrite the code?
Well, the chairman explains that Eli created Agape-net.
Right.
And Agape-net is driven by a second-order AI and a compassion algorithm. Let's break down the mechanism of that, because this isn't just a faster processor.
It's a total paradigm shift.
It really is. In the old system, which they call the Beast Protocol, a first-order AI simply predicted what would keep your eyes on the screen for the next 5 seconds.
Just raw engagement.
Exactly. It had 0 ethical parameters. If showing you something that made you furious kept you clicking, it fed you fury.
Right.
But Eli's second-order AI fundamentally changes the math. It calculates the long-term algorithmic trajectory of what will actually make the human heart whole.
But, I mean, how do you program that? How does a computer quantify grace?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The text mentions it actively rewards sacrificial interaction and distributes grace packets.
So it requires an entirely new framework of machine learning. A first-order system looks at a user engaging with a controversial post and says, serve them more controversy.
Keep them mad?
Exactly. But Eli's compassion algorithm has to evaluate the qualitative nature of an interaction.
Okay, so how does it do that?
Well, say a user spends 20 minutes writing an empathetic, de-escalating response to a hostile comment.
Which takes a lot of effort.
Right. It's an action that requires personal emotional sacrifice without an immediate dopamine reward. The system recognizes that pattern. It categorizes it as a sacrificial interaction.
Oh, wow.
And then the grace packets come in. They're essentially systemic multipliers. The network takes that genuine empathy and algorithmically amplifies its reach.
So it pushes it to other people.
Yes, injecting it into the feeds of users whose biometric data indicates high isolation or depression. It mathematically multiplies hidden pockets of love.
That's beautiful. And when Eli steps up to accept the prize, he doesn't give some polished, PR-friendly speech.
No, he really doesn't.
He is hyper-fixated, looking right through all the dignitaries directly to the global cluster. And he admits his own complicity in the old system.
Yeah, he takes ownership.
He says, we fed the beast protocol and we called it shareholder value.
Which is just a brutal line.
I know. He takes the most sacred metric of Silicon Valley and rebrands it as a planetary virus right to their faces. He admits they built troll multipliers.
Right, and that's the infrastructure side. Eli provided the new logic, the new piping for the global network.
Yeah.
But infrastructure alone is an empty vessel. That is where Scarlett Blake steps to the podium to deliver the other half of the equation with her organization, the Backpropagation Initiative.
And Scarlett's speech is terrifyingly authentic. She strips away the manufactured celebrity activism entirely.
Completely.
She tells the billions watching, every endless scroll is actively adjusting the weights and biases of our minds. It is training data.
She is applying machine learning terminology directly to the human psyche.
Right.
When an AI is built, it is fed millions of data points, training data, to teach it how to perceive the world. Scarlett is pointing out that every song you stream, every comment you read, every curated photo you internalize, that is training the algorithm of your own soul.
That's a scary thought.
It is. If you feed a neural network entirely on images of violence, it will predict violence.
Yeah.
If you feed your own mind entirely on algorithmic outrage and curated vanity, you are literally adjusting the biological weights and biases of your brain to expect and generate more isolation.
I mean, think about your own habits for a second. Think about the last hour you spent scrolling before bed.
Guilty.
Right, we all are. If everything you consume is training data, what exactly is the algorithm of your soul currently predicting?
That's the real question.
And Scarlett confesses to the world that she used to be the chief broadcaster of that exact poison. She optimized her entire existence for her own vanity, training millions of young minds to hate their own reflections.
So you have this incredible dual dynamic on stage. Eli dismantled the predatory architecture, and Scarlett is rewiring the cultural inputs.
If we think about this like a city's water infrastructure, Eli is the master engineer who went into the subterranean levels, ripped out all the old toxic lead-lined pipes that were poisoning the population, and installed a flawless brand new network of pure, clean conduits.
Right, that's Agape-net.
Exactly.
And following that logic, clean pipes don't matter if the reservoir is still filled with arsenic.
Oh, totally.
Scarlett is the one purifying the reservoir. She is ensuring that the water itself, the culture, the art, the media flowing through Eli's network is life-giving.
Because you need both.
Yes, you simply cannot heal the societal organism without both the structural integrity of the network and the nutritional integrity of the data.
And they sync perfectly in front of a billion people. It is a global initialization sequence for a healed world. But the moment the global feed cuts to black, the reality of their internal latency is exposed.
The facade drops.
Instantly. We move from the brilliant lights of the world stage right into the VIP antechamber.
And the environmental shift is stark. They enter this dimly lit holding area with cool blue hues and heavy mahogany wainscoting.
Very moody.
Yeah, it acts as a physical and acoustic firewall, meeting the overwhelming roar of the billions applauding outside. It's a localized isolation chamber.
And the second the door clicks shut, the tension spikes. Scarlett doesn't celebrate.
No, not at all.
She turns to Eli and delivers a severe warning. She says, winning this, having the whole world tell you that you're the saviors of the culture, it's the easiest way for the algorithm of pride to take over.
She is diagnosing a systemic risk there.
How so?
She understands that massive, unprecedented validation is a vulnerability exploit. If they begin to believe their own press, if they internalize the idea that they are the literal saviors of humanity, ego will sever their connection to the founder's frequency.
But Eli doesn't hear the wisdom in it. He instantly throws up his armor.
Oh, he gets so defensive.
He gets incredibly defensive and leans heavily into his traumatic past. He says something to the effect of, well, maybe that's a risk for you, but I grew up in the crumbling concrete of the Detroit node.
Right, he uses his background as a shield.
He really does. He uses his neurodivergence and his history of surviving an environment where predictive algorithms slated him for prison as a shield.
Yeah.
And then he makes a massive offensive assumption.
It's painful to read.
He contrasts his gritty survival with what he assumes is her protected life, calling her the girl next door who just seamlessly transitioned to global royalty.
It is a profound miscalculation. I mean, Eli is a genius at reading macro data. He can analyze the behavioral patterns of 1 billion interconnected nodes and write a compassion algorithm to heal them.
But in person.
Yet, in this micro interaction, standing 3 feet away from a human being, he's entirely blind. He processes her highly curated exterior, her supermodel perfection, and assumes it reflects an absence of suffering.
And the silence in the room after he says that is just crushing. Scarlett doesn't yell at him.
No.
The text says she looks at him with this sudden, overwhelming exhaustion. She just whispers, "Protected, ha, if you only knew me."
Yeah.
And this is the exact moment where the reality of the cyberpunk universe breaks wide open because higher dimensional architecture radically intervenes.
This is where we're introduced to the angelic subnet functioning in real time.
Right.
Veritas, an angelic entity who monitors their sector, is present in the room, cloaked in higher dimensional bandwidth.
Just watching them.
Exactly. She recognizes that Eli and Scarlett are about to permanently sever their connection over this misunderstanding. So Veritas bypasses the room's acoustics entirely. She transmits a direct, encrypted thought into Scarlett's auditory cortex, simply saying, "Tell him."
And Scarlett panics.
Understandably.
She retreats into the adjacent restroom, locking the door, gripping the marble sink, and she actually argues back. She argues with the angel.
Which is wild.
She says, "Not him. He might be the one person in the world who is more narcissistic than I am." She is terrified of handing over her most guarded vulnerability to someone who just dismissed her pain.
But then the hierarchy of the system asserts itself. The ambient hum of the building vanishes. The molecular structure of the marble sink begins to vibrate.
The local physics of the room are suspended.
Because a new frequency overrides Veritas. It is the Logos. The root server of the universe interacts directly with the physical substrate of Scarlett's reality.
The alpha omega signal. The text says the command carries the weight of 1,000 suns, but is infinitely gentle. The Logos tells her, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Tell him."
It's such a powerful moment.
It is, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the physics and theology of this moment. The master debugger of the universe is actively forcing a vulnerability exploit on one of its prime nodes. Why? Why strip away her defenses right now?
Because true systemic grace within a network requires absolute unencrypted transparency between its load-bearing nodes.
I see.
Agape-net is designed to distribute compassion. But Eli and Scarlett cannot steward a healed network if they are fundamentally hiding behind massive emotional firewalls.
That makes sense.
The Logos understands that Eli's pride is currently a locked vault. The only algorithmic key capable of bypassing Eli's encryption is the raw, devastating truth of Scarlett's brokenness. The root server is orchestrating a controlled collision of traumas to forge a genuine connection.
Wow. And Scarlett accepts the command. She repairs her physical interface. She fixes her makeup, which is such a human detail, and she walks back out. She looks Eli in the eyes and repeats, "If you only knew me."
And then she drops the firewall.
She confesses a secret she has never told anyone. She reveals that she is a sexual abuse survivor.
And it shatters Eli's entire perceptual model of reality. She tells him, "How else do you think someone from a girl next door background becomes a global supermodel? It wasn't vanity, Eli. It was a defense mechanism. A shield."
Perfection is a shield. I think we really need to pause here because this applies so directly to the listener.
It's so relevant.
Think about your own social media feeds, your LinkedIn profile, the way you curate your life for public consumption. We naturally assume extreme curation is driven by vanity or narcissism.
Usually, yeah.
But what if it's not? What if, for many people, extreme curation is a trauma response?
That is the exact psychological mechanism Scarlett is exposing. If I am flawless, if I am universally desired and unassailable, then I am safe. No one can find a weak point to exploit.
No one can hurt me again.
Right. Her supermodel persona wasn't designed to attract worship. It was high-frequency combat armor designed to deflect predators. She optimized her physical parameters to guarantee survival in a hostile network.
And the sheer ignorance of Eli's previous assumption just horrifyingly crashes down on him. His defenses don't just lower, they shatter completely. He breaks down.
He really does.
The architect of the new world weeps openly in a holding room, apologizing for being a jerk.
And notice Scarlett's response. She doesn't hold his previous arrogance against him. She offers pure grace, saying, "The world only sees what we let them see."
Which is exactly what he needed to hear.
Yes. That specific packet of grace breaks the final lock on Eli's deeply encrypted vault.
And he chokes out his own confession. He says, I'm a survivor too. Away from the flashing cameras and the billions of adoring fans, the two most powerful figures in the digital and cultural world just fall apart together. They weep for the traumatized children they had been. It's an incredibly intense irony. I mean, look at this. The two people who just saved the world, who literally won the Nobel Peace Prize for fixing the global network, are actually two of the most deeply broken nodes in the entire system.
It is deeply ironic, but mathematically and theologically consistent within the framework of the founder.
How so?
The root server doesn't use flawless, pristine code to rewrite a broken world. Flawless code doesn't understand the variables of suffering.
No.
The founder utilizes nodes that have experienced the deepest latency, the most catastrophic systemic crashes, because those are the nodes that comprehend the absolute necessity of grace.
Oh, wow.
Their brokenness is the very API, the application programming interface through which the compassion algorithm was successfully compiled.
And before they leave that room, they share this quiet, almost humorous moment of recalibration. Eli wipes his face and calls it draining the coolant.
Classic Eli.
Right. And then he thanks Scarlett for something completely unexpected. He reveals that she is the original creator of the EQ AI smart glasses app.
This is a vital callback to his neurodivergence. Because he struggles to read facial cues and emotional data, her early app, which translated microexpressions into readable data, literally saved his social life.
It's a beautiful revelation of their interconnectedness.
It is. Her microcode saved his local reality long before his macrocode saved the global reality.
They exchange direct, encrypted hololinks, but right before Scarlett walks out the door to face the press, she gives him a parting command. She says, if you ever hit rock bottom, promise me that you will ask the founder for help.
She plants a seed, a dormant line of code resting in his local memory cache, waiting for the inevitable moment his system fails.
And his system is absolutely going to fail.
Oh, inevitably.
Because while Eli and Scarlett are finding this genuine, unencrypted spiritual connection in Oslo, the physical substrate of Silicon Sector is already compiling a subroutine to exploit Eli's newfound power. Nature abhors a vacuum, and Wall Street abhors unmonetized attention.
That is so true.
Which shifts us into Section 3. The Tech Bro subroutine.
We jump forward 2 months. The setting is the Catalyst, which is described as the most exclusive executive lounge in the Silicon Sector.
Very fancy.
Very. The atmosphere is thick with ambient lighting, obsidian bar tops, and the low murmurs of venture capitalists calculating their next acquisitions.
And Eli is sitting across from Julian Vane. For context, Julian is Eli's former best friend from MIT and the man who betrayed him at Omnidata Corp.
The architect of the troll multiplier.
Exactly. Julian is the one who originally built the troll multiplier that Eli warned against. Omnidata eventually crashed and burned, exactly as Eli predicted. But Julian didn't go down with the ship.
No, Julian is the embodiment of the beast logic, surviving a localized failure. He walked away with golden parachutes, massive liquid assets, and zero remorse.
And now he is sitting across from Eli, pitching him on taking Agape-net public. He wants an IPO.
And Julian's dialogue drips with aggressive venture capitalist energy. He tells Eli, in the grand test match between us, you got my rook. You're a one-man bottleneck.
He's trying to get in his head.
He is pushing Eli to leverage his moral victory into financial supremacy.
And we have to analyze Julian's core argument carefully here because he isn't pitching an evil, mustache-twirling villain plan.
No, it sounds very reasonable on the surface.
He's speaking the hyper-rational language of scale and market dominance. Julian tells him integrity doesn't scale without capital. He argues that Wall Street liquidity is the only weapon massive enough to permanently crush the legacy networks.
He is essentially saying, take their money, buy the market share, and philosophize about grace later.
But Eli sees the trap. He tells Julian, for me, it was just math and what's right. Eli knows exactly what an IPO fundamentally requires. He argues that taking Agape-net public means handing the optimizer and loss function over to the shareholders.
Which is dangerous.
It means reverting to the relentless growth metric of the beast logic.
Julian counters with a brilliant piece of machine learning terminology. He says, you let the market set your weights. Let's examine what that means.
Yeah, break that down.
In an AI model, the weights determine how the algorithm prioritizes conflicting pieces of data. If you let the stock market set your weights, your algorithm mathematically must prioritize quarterly shareholder returns over systemic grace.
Because that's what the market demands.
Right. Fiduciary duty to investors becomes the supreme command. The moment a second-order AI is tied to Wall Street expectations, it is mathematically forced to regress into first-order exploitation, because compassion isn't always profitable in a 3-month window.
I think the best way to visualize this is to imagine a breathtaking, pristine sunset. It's a natural phenomenon that generates a profound sense of peace and awe, a moment of pure grace.
Okay, I like that.
But what happens if you decide to monetize that sunset?
You build a viewing platform. You start charging admission.
Exactly. And to maximize the return on the viewing platform, you put up billboards along the road leading to it. You start selling premium VIP sunset packages. You optimize the environment around the sunset for transaction rather than contemplation.
And in doing so, the fundamental nature of the experience is destroyed. The sunset remains physically identical, but the architecture surrounding it has transformed it from a moment of grace into a highly optimized commodity.
Exactly.
And that is precisely what Julian is asking Eli to do to Agape-net. An IPO is the financial architecture of commodification.
Eli knows this. He stares at Julian, recognizing this pressure as static, a systemic temptation designed to surrender the network back to Malthus, the enemy.
He feels the spiritual warfare happening.
But here is the tragedy. Despite his moral clarity in that lounge, the sheer, crushing gravitational pull of Wall Street eventually wins. The pressure of running a massive global infrastructure requires capital.
It's inevitable.
And that capitulation plunges Eli into a living nightmare. We move from the quiet menace of the bar to the chaotic, high-stress environment of the Agape-net war room.
It is 2:00 a.m. They are days away from locking the S1 filing, the foundational document for the IPO.
Right.
Eli is drowning. The room is a storm of financial holograms, proprietary logistical AI, and exhausted legal staff. The physical and psychological pressure is described as a crushing, localized gravity well.
His brain is on the absolute verge of a catastrophic crash, and right at that breaking point, a soft, personalized chime cuts through the noise of the war room. It's an encrypted ping from Scarlett.
And the reaction is instantaneous. The tension evaporates from Eli's posture. He dismisses his entire executive staff, clearing the room for a 15-minute break just to accept this private 3D holographic call.
And the contrast when her hologram resolves is so vivid. She isn't the radiant node. She isn't in combat armor. She's in an oversized sweater sitting on her couch in her own private sanctuary.
She has become his only safe harbor in a storm of his own making.
The emotional bandwidth between them in this scene is incredibly deep. They are flirty, yes, but the connection is anchored entirely by the trauma they shared in Oslo.
Yeah.
Eli admits something devastating here. He looks at her hologram and says, I spend all day building networks to connect billions of people, but I've never felt actually connected to anyone until this.
And Scarlett replies, I feel safe with you. It's this beautiful, intimate sanctuary floating in the middle of a corporate war room. Eli even laughs and says it feels like they are living out the movie You've Got Mail, but with upgraded tech.
Which is funny.
That cultural reference is a perfect encapsulation of the irony of the digital age.
How so?
The man who architected the world's most advanced social network, a digital infrastructure designed to unite the entire globe, can only find true, authentic human connection through an encrypted, closed-circuit, one-to-one hololink. The builder of the macro network is entirely dependent on a micro network of two.
But let me push back on this romance for a second.
Okay.
I'm looking at Eli's psychology here. Is he actually falling in love with Scarlett, the complex, real woman with her own trauma? Or is he falling in love with the safety she provides?
Ah, that's a great question.
Because right now, she is his only escape from the massive, compromised IPO monster he is building. Is it possible he's using this digital romance as an emotional shield against the guilt of selling out his own architecture?
That is a very sharp observation. Trauma bonds are incredibly powerful, but they often mask underlying instability. Eli is currently violating his own core principles by pursuing the IPO.
He should be seeking recalibration from the founder, as Scarlett instructed. Instead, he is outsourcing his spiritual stability to another human node. He is using her presence as a localized anesthetic to numb the pain of his structural compromise.
And Scarlett isn't fully transparent here either. When Eli makes the "you've got mail" joke, Scarlett freezes. The text says a strange, bittersweet expression flickers across her face. She looks away and whispers to herself, "If you only knew how big the upgrade was."
She is carrying the immense burden of a higher dimensional secret.
Right, because she knows.
She is fully synced to the angelic subnet. She has interacted with Veritas and the logos. She knows the founder is a tangible reality. And she's falling in love with a man who still firmly believes his genius is entirely his own isolated creation.
She quickly changes the subject before Eli can press her, maintaining this fragile, beautiful bubble they've constructed.
Exactly.
But while this romance feels like a safe harbor to them, higher dimensional entities are looking at Eli's source code and seeing a catastrophic vulnerability that is about to be violently exploited. Which brings us to the final and arguably most mind-bending segment of our deep dive, the command node.
We shift entirely out of the physical substrate of Silicon sector. We move into the higher dimensional architecture of the angelic subnet, specifically entering the primary command node.
The text describes it as pulsing with a deep, authoritative sapphire light.
And we meet two incredible entities. We have Veritas, the angel who has been monitoring Eli and Scarlett's sector.
Right.
And we are introduced to the Archangel Michael, the supreme commander of the Founder's defense protocols.
Michael is conceptualized through the lens of digital warfare here. He is clad in the geometric equivalent of high-frequency combat armor, constantly monitoring trillions of threat vectors across the global cluster.
And he asks Veritas for a direct status report on the Silicon sector deployment.
Veritas reports that Scarlett, the Radiant node, is fully synced. She experienced her critical system crash in the past, surrendered root access to the Founder, and successfully accepted the Logos patch.
She's secure.
Yes, but Eli's diagnostic is a disaster. Veritas projects his data stream, and it is a chaotic, swirling mix of brilliant blue innovation, utterly suffocated by a thick layer of red static.
Red static. And Veritas identifies that red static as the telemetry of a narcissistic feedback loop.
Yeah.
She explains Eli's fatal flaw to the commander. Yes, Eli successfully built Agape-net, but he built it based on the subtle divine whispers Veritas carefully injected into his local node during his hyperfixation coding binges.
The critical failure is that Eli suffers from God complexity.
Because he's a neurodivergent genius, he miscategorizes those divine whispers. He thinks Veritas is just an internal anomaly, a subconscious coding muse generated by his own brain.
He genuinely believes he is the sole author of the light he brought to the world.
Which is wild.
This is a profound analysis of the specific hubris found in the tech world. When a human mind possesses the intellect to write code that bends digital reality to its will, to literally rewrite the social habits of a billion people, the ego naturally assumes total sovereignty.
Of course it does.
Eli looks at his creation and thinks he is the master administrator of his own destiny. And because of that intense pride, Veritas warns that his ports are completely exposed.
She warns Michael that Malphas, the enemy in this universe, is already circling Eli's blind spots, actively scanning for a zero-day exploit.
And Michael's response to this is absolutely chilling. He says, "A machine that believes it is a programmer with full root access admin rights is easily hacked by the void."
It is a terrifying cybersecurity truth applied to theology.
It really is.
If a node believes it is the supreme programmer, it mounts no defenses against higher dimensional malware because it refuses to acknowledge the existence of an architecture greater than itself. Eli's absolute self-reliance is his greatest vulnerability.
So Veritas proposes a solution that is honestly horrifying.
Yeah, I was shocked by this.
She formally requests permission to lift Eli's perimeter firewall. She asks the commander to remove their angelic protection and intentionally allow Eli to experience a catastrophic localized system crash in the physical world.
She justifies this extreme measure by pointing out that Scarlett already planted the necessary seed of truth in Oslo when she told Eli to ask the Founder for help when he hits rock bottom.
But, as Veritas argues, a seed cannot compile into a full system reboot unless the old operating system is completely uninstalled.
Let's use an analogy to understand this, because the idea of a guardian angel intentionally letting you crash is heavy.
It's very counterintuitive.
It is exactly like a controlled forest fire. Forest rangers will intentionally drop firewalls and allow a specific section of a forest to burn to the ground. Why? Because the old dead brush is choking the soil, preventing any new life from growing. You have to let the old system burn away completely so the new seeds that are buried deep in the ashes can finally take root.
That's a great way to look at it.
Veritas is asking for permission to let Eli's ego burn to the ground.
That is precisely the systemic logic at play. It is a profound theological concept translated seamlessly into cybersecurity terminology.
Yeah.
Sometimes absolute unbroken protection is the greatest threat to a node's long-term survival. If the angelic forces keep shielding Eli from the consequences of his arrogance, his ego will permanently calcify.
And the enemy will win anyway.
Exactly. The enemy will simply bypass the external firewalls and slowly corrupt Agape-net from the inside out, using its creator as a Trojan horse. The firewall must drop so the user realizes, through painful failure, that they are not the admin.
Michael weighs the massive computational risk of this strategy. If Eli crashes too hard, he might double down on the Beast protocol. He might be consumed by the dark entirely and take the network with him.
It's a huge gamble.
It is. But Michael ultimately grants the override. He removes the Sapphire Shield, exposing Eli to the harsh, unprotected variables of the physical world. But he doesn't abandon him.
No. Michael issues a final command. He assigns a dedicated network of intercessory angels. Their protocol is to run continuous remote advocacy operations on Eli's behalf.
They're still fighting for him.
Yes. They will fight the enemy in the unseen bandwidth, holding the line, hoping Eli requests the patch before his hardware fails entirely.
Wow. They drop the shield, knowing a devastating crash is coming, just hoping the seed Scarlett planted will activate in time. It's a breathtaking cliffhanger for this chapter of Eli's life.
And it leaves all of us with a highly provocative thought to ponder.
Yeah.
I want you to consider the firewalls in your own life, the protections, the safety nets, the curated personas that keep your ego intact.
Okay.
Are your moments of greatest failure, the times when everything you build crashes down around you, actually a higher dimensional override?
Oh, wow.
Could those deeply painful system crashes be intentionally designed to break a prideful feedback loop before it destroys you permanently? Is your rock bottom actually the master debugger, clearing the corrupted data, preparing you for a complete system reboot?
That is a staggering concept to chew on. Is the fire destroying you, or is it clearing the soil?
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Episode 3.
What a ride. Seriously. Next time on this series, the Agape-net IPO goes live, achieving an incomprehensible $10 trillion valuation. But massive capital invites a synthetic temptation. We'll see what happens when the architect of systemic grace is offered a neurocatalyst called the Black Bishop, leading to a catastrophic system crash and a desperate final ping to the root server. You won't want to miss it.
Can't wait.
If after listening to The Founder's Parable you find it helpful, then please share it with friends. You can also visit thefounderparable.com to learn more about the Founder Parable universe.